Nobody warned me that building something of my own wouldn't automatically feel safe. I had this belief, and I hear it from so many of you, that if I could just create something for myself, if I could build my own thing, I would finally feel in control. The triggers would quiet down, the nervous system dysregulation that made showing up in someone else's environment so exhausting would ease up, because I would be setting the terms. And in some way, that's true. But in ways I wasn't prepared for, building a business after trauma comes with its own set of challenges that nobody in the entrepreneurship space was talking about. At least not in any way that made sense for people like us. So that's what this episode is about. Welcome to Your Trauma-Wise Career Guide. I'm Cyndi Bennett, trauma-informed career coach and founder of the Resilient Career Academy. This is the space where we talk honestly about what it means to build a career or a business while you're also doing the work of healing. If you're new here, welcome. You've landed in an episode that I think is going to feel very familiar. And if you've been here a while, you already know that we don't do toxic positivity here. We don't tell you to push through or hustle harder. We look at what's actually happening and we figure out what actually helps. Today, I want to talk about something that comes up again and again in my own experience and in the experiences of the people I work with. The specific ways that trauma shows up when you're building a business. Not the workplace version of this, the entrepreneur version, because they are not the same thing. And I think a lot of us find that out the hard way. I'm going to name 4 specific challenges that I see most often. I want to validate what you might be experiencing, and then I want to offer some reframes. Not fixes, not 5-step solutions, but ways of looking at these challenges that might make them feel a little less like evidence that you're failing. Let's get into it. Before I name the challenges, I want to acknowledge something important about how a lot of us ended up here. Many of the people in this community didn't start a business because they had a passion they couldn't wait to monetize. They didn't start because they wanted financial freedom or because they'd always dreamed of being their own boss. They started because the traditional workplace became too difficult to remain in, or because they could see it was heading that way and they wanted to build something before they had no choice. Some of you are still in your jobs right now, still navigating the environment that's been wearing you down. Still building on the side, still in that in-between space where you're carrying both things at once. That is its own particular kind of exhaustion, and I want to name it. And for others, entrepreneurship feels like the answer because at least you'd have control. At least you'd be setting the terms. I want to honor that impulse completely. It's a brave one, and it is often absolutely the right direction. But here's what I wish someone had told me, and what I wish the entrepreneurship world talked about more honestly. The nervous system you bring into your business is the same nervous system you had in the workplace. The patterns that formed in response to years of difficult experiences don't disappear just because you're building something new. They come with you. And sometimes the specific demands of running a business, being visible, setting prices, holding limits with clients, sustaining momentum when your capacity fluctuates, these can activate those patterns in ways that catch us completely off guard. That's not a reason not to build. It is just something worth knowing going in. The first challenge is visibility. This one tends to hit hardest and earliest. Building a business in 2026 means being seen. It means showing up online, sharing your perspective, letting people get a sense of who you are and what you stand for. For most of us, that's a non-negotiable part of growing an audience and attracting clients. And for trauma survivors, being seen can feel genuinely unsafe. This isn't a mindset problem. This isn't something you can affirmation your way out of. For many of us, visibility was dangerous at some point. Being noticed meant being targeted. Standing out meant becoming a target. Sharing your perspective meant being criticized, dismissed, or punished for it. Your nervous system learned those lessons well, and it is doing its job when it sends up flares every time you go to post something, record a video, or put your name on something public. You might notice that you write something and then delete it. You might notice that you feel a spike of anxiety after you post, even when the response is positive. You might find yourself shrinking your message, softening things that don't need to be softened, or disappearing for stretches of time when the visibility starts to feel like too much. If any of that sounds familiar, I want you to hear this. That is not weakness. That is a nervous system response that made sense at some point and is now being applied to a context where you are actually safe. The work isn't to override it. The work is to help your nervous system learn slowly and with evidence that being seen in this context is different. The second challenge is pricing, specifically charging what your work is actually worth. This one is layered. On the surface, it looks like a business problem. You set your prices low, or you discount constantly, or you add extras without charging for them, or you feel a wave of guilt and anxiety every time you consider raising your rates. And a lot of business coaches will tell you this is a confidence issue, that you just need to believe in your value more. But for trauma survivors, undercharging isn't about confidence. It's about safety. If you grew up in an environment where asking for things was dangerous, where having needs made you a burden, where wanting more than you were given was punished or shamed, then asking someone to pay you a significant amount of money can activate that same old fear. What if they say no? What if they think I'm too much? What if I lose them? And for those of you who are building specifically to eventually leave difficult workplaces, there's sometimes another layer, a fear that if you charge too much, you'll price people out and then you'll be alone again. The business won't take off and you'll have no way out. That fear is real. I'm not going to tell you it isn't, but I want you to notice it for what it is, a protective response, not evidence that your work isn't worth a fair price. The third challenge is one that I see so consistently, I've started to think of it as almost a rite of passage for trauma survivors in business. Overgiving to clients and people-pleasing in professional relationships. Here's what it tends to look like. You take on a client and you pour everything into them. You go well beyond the scope of what you agreed to. You respond to messages at all hours. You add sessions, add resources, add support because you want them to succeed and you want them to be happy with you. And when they are, it feels good. But it also feels necessary, like the approval is something you need in order to feel okay. And then something happens. A client is unhappy, or they leave, or they give you critical feedback. And the response in your body is completely disproportionate to the situation. Because it's not just about this client. It's about every time you tried to be enough and it wasn't enough. People-pleasing is a survival strategy. It kept many of us safe in environments where it wasn't safe to have needs, set limits, or disappoint people. Bringing that pattern into business doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means you're human and your nervous system adapted to what it had to work with. The invitation here, and I use the word invitation very intentionally, is to start noticing when you're giving from a place of genuine abundance and desire and when you're giving from a place of fear. They can feel similar on the surface, but they feel very different in your body. The fourth challenge is capacity. And this is the one the entrepreneurship world is perhaps least equipped to support us with. Every corner of the business building world will tell you that momentum matters. Show up consistently, post every day, scale, grow. The message, spoken or unspoken, is that slow is a problem and stopping is failure. For trauma survivors, that message cannot be just unhelpful, but actively harmful. Many of us are working with nervous systems that have a genuinely different relationship to energy, capacity, and recovery. What looks from the outside like inconsistency or lack of discipline is often a nervous system that is doing its best to regulate. Rest isn't laziness. A slow week isn't a setback. Pulling back when things feel like too much is often the most intelligent business decision you can make, because the alternative is burnout. And burnout in a trauma-affected nervous system can take a very long time to recover from. I've had to learn this in my own business. There have been stretches where I couldn't show up the way the online business world told me I should. And I've had to make peace with the fact that my version of building is going to look different from the templates I was handed. Not worse, different. Going slow is not the opposite of going somewhere. For many of us, it is the only sustainable way to actually get there. So what do you do with all of this? I want to be careful here because I don't want to turn this episode into a checklist. These aren't problems to be solved in a tidy sequence. They're patterns that developed over time, and they shift over time with support and with practice and with a lot of self-compassion. But there are a few things I want to offer as places to start. The first is simply this: name what's happening. When you notice yourself deleting a post, or undercharging, or adding extras you didn't agree to, or pushing through when your body is asking you to stop, pause for just a moment and ask yourself what's underneath that. Not to judge it, just to see it. Naming a pattern is the beginning of having a choice about it. The second is to give yourself permission to build differently. The entrepreneurship templates you've been handed were not designed for people like us. They were designed for people whose nervous systems work differently, whose relationship to visibility and risk and pacing is different. That doesn't mean you can't build something meaningful and sustainable. It means you may need to build it on terms that actually fit you. And the third is to notice that these challenges, as hard as they are, also point to strengths. The person who overgives to clients is someone with a profound capacity for care. The person who struggles with visibility often has something genuinely worth saying. The person who goes slow is often building something with real roots. You might notice that the very things that make this hard are also the things that make what you're building real. I started this episode by saying that nobody warned me that building something of my own wouldn't automatically feel safe, and that's true. But here's the other thing that often goes unsaid. The work of building a business as a trauma survivor, even when it's slow, even when it's hard, even when you're doing it alongside everything else you're carrying, it is some of the most meaningful work there is. Not because struggle is ennobling. I don't believe that. But because building something that actually fits who you are at a pace your nervous system can sustain in a way that reflects your values, that is worth doing. And if you're in this season right now, if you're building something and finding that the old patterns have followed you here, I want you to know that you are not alone in that, and you don't have to figure it out by yourself. If you're curious about what it might look like to have support that's specifically designed for trauma survivors who are navigating this, I invite you to book a free discovery call with me. There's no pressure, no pitch. It's just a conversation about where you are and whether working together might make sense. You can find the link in the show notes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for building what you're building, and I'll see you next week. You're not walking this path alone. Every step you take toward a trauma-wise career is an act of courage, and I'm here cheering you on. If today's episode resonated with you, share it with another survivor who needs to hear this message. Together, we're rewriting the rules of career success. Keep rising, keep healing, keep building.